The assembly hall stretched wider than any cathedral on Earth. Its curved walls gleamed with bioluminescent panels that shifted colors according to whoever spoke. Right now, the entire chamber glowed an angry red as counselor. Dexfer addressed the human delegation. Unikim sat perfectly still in her chair. Her hands rested on the polished table before her, fingers loosely clasped. She'd learned long ago that stillness unsettled the other species. They expected humans to fidget, to show their nervousness. She gave them nothing. To her left sat Taiyang Park, his military uniform crisp despite 3 days of continuous negotiations. To her right, Guan Li scrolled through economic data on her tablet, her expression neutral as stone. The three of them had represented Earth for 6 months now. 6 long months of watching the Council's demands grow more absurd. Vexvor's voice boomed through the chamber. His species, the Vrexians, stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and crystalline skin that reflected light like broken glass. He gestured dramatically with all 4 limbs as he spoke. "The human expansion must end," he declared. "Your colonies consume resources needed by established worlds. Your trade ships clog the ancient routes. Your very presence disrupts the order we have maintained for 10,000 years." Yuna had heard this speech before. Different words, same message. Humanity was too new, too aggressive, too successful. In just 2 centuries since discovering faster-than-light travel, humans had established 47 colonies and become essential to galactic trade. The older species hadn't expected that. They'd assumed humanity would remain weak and grateful for whatever scraps the Council offered. They'd been wrong. Therefore, Vexfor continued, "The Council has prepared final terms. You will surrender control of 70% of your trade routes to Council administration. You will dismantle 30 of your frontier colonies within 1 standard year. You will accept Council peacekeepers on all remaining human worlds to ensure compliance with galactic law." Round the chamber, representatives from 46 other species watched. Some looked uncomfortable. Others nodded in approval. A few wouldn't meet Yuna's eyes. Guan leaned close to Yuna and whispered, "He's not finished." She was right. Vexfer raised one hand for silence, though no one had spoken. "Furthermore, all human military vessels will be restricted to your home system. Earth will pay an annual tithe of resources to compensate for the disruption your species has caused. These terms are non-negotiable and must be accepted within 1 standard rotation." He sat down with a satisfied smile. The chamber erupted in murmurs. The Silicate Collective's representative clicked its approval. The Delphic Union's ambassador shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. The smaller species stayed silent, as they always did when the powerful spoke. Yuna felt Taiyang tense beside her. She knew what he was thinking. These terms would destroy humanity's independence. They would reduce Earth to a vassal state, controlled and exploited by species that feared what humans might become. The Council had planned this carefully. Human ships were already being turned away from major trade stations. Economic sanctions had frozen Earth's accounts in 3 major banking collectives. The Vrexian fleet had moved to strategic positions around human space. They'd created a crisis, then offered themselves as the solution. It was brilliant, really. Cruel but brilliant. Speaker Morden, an ancient creature that looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, addressed Yuna directly. "Ambassador Kim, you have heard the Council's terms. What is humanity's response?" Yuna stood slowly. The room fell silent. Every eye, sensor, and optical organ focused on her. She looked small compared to most species present. Humans always did. But she'd learned that size meant nothing. "I have a moment to confer with my delegation?" She asked. Morden's light pulsed in agreement. "You may have 5 minutes." Yuna turned to Taiyang and Jiwan. They huddled close, their voices barely audible. To the Council, it must have looked like panic. Desperate humans trying to find a way out of an impossible situation. In reality, Yuna asked just one question. "Are our people ready?" Taiyang nodded once. "Everything's in position." Giwan checked her tablet. "Confirmed. All protocols are active." Yuna straightened. "Then we proceed." The 5 minutes passed. Yuna stood again, facing the Council. Her heart beat steady and strong in her chest. She thought about Earth, about the billions of people who trusted her to do the right thing. She thought about the human colonies, thriving worlds full of families and dreamers. She thought about the future her species deserved. "The Council's terms are unacceptable," she said simply. The murmurs started again. Dexter rose to his feet, all four arms spread wide in a gesture of disbelief. "You misunderstand your position," he said. "You have no choice. Accept these terms or face destruction. Your economy will collapse. Your colonies will starve. Your military cannot stand against the combined might of the Council." Yuna began gathering her things. She picked up her tablet, her documentation, the small Earth flag that sat at her place. Taiyang and Giwan did the same. "Ambassador Kim, what are you doing?" Morda's light flickered in confusion. "We're leaving," Yuna said. She walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. "You cannot simply leave." Dexfor's voice had lost its certainty. "These negotiations aren't finished." Yuna stopped at the door. She turned back to face the assembled council one last time. 47 species, hundreds of representatives, the most powerful beings in known space. They all stared at her with various expressions of shock. "Counselor Thexfer, these stopped being negotiations the moment you delivered an ultimatum, instead of opening a dialogue," she said. "You don't want to negotiate. You want us to surrender? We respectfully decline. You need us." Thexfer shouted. "Your species will die without council protection and trade." Yuna smiled then. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something others didn't. "No, Counselor. You've made an error in judgment. A critical one." She paused, letting the moment stretch. "You forgot something important about humans. We spent 200,000 years on one small planet, surviving ice ages, diseases, disasters, and our own worst impulses. We learned to thrive in deserts and tundra, on mountains and islands, in every harsh environment our world could create." She gestured at the magnificent chamber around them. "We don't need your permission to succeed. We don't need your protection to survive. And we certainly don't need a council that sees us as a problem to be managed rather than partners to be respected." Guan opened the door. Cool air rushed in from the corridor beyond. "Wait." The Delphic ambassador stood, his tentacles writhing in agitation. "Perhaps we can discuss modified terms." "No," Yuna said firmly. "We're done discussing. When the Council is ready to treat humanity as equals, Earth will be waiting. Until then, we'll manage on our own. We're quite good at that." She walked through the door. Taiyang followed. Then Jiwan. The door sealed behind them with a soft hiss that sounded like finality. Inside the chamber, silence reigned for exactly 3 seconds. Then everyone tried to talk at once. Accusations flew. Dexter demanded action. Smaller species questioned whether this was wise. The Silicate Collective calculated financial losses. Morden called for order, but no one listened. Outside in the empty corridor, Yuna allowed herself one deep breath. Then she tapped her communicator. "This is Ambassador Kim to all human vessels and stations. Execute Protocol Exodus. Bring our people home." Across the galaxy, humanity began to move. Minho Choi watched the chrono display count down on his office wall. 3 hours since Ambassador Kim walked out of the council chamber. 3 hours until the galaxy realized what humanity walking away actually meant. Prosperity. Station orbited at the edge of the Andari Nebula, a massive structure that served as the primary human trading hub in this sector. 80,000 people lived and worked here. Half were human. The other half came from 23 different species, all conducting business that kept this part of the galaxy running smoothly, or it had until today. "Status?" Minho asked his operations manager. Houndbei looked up from her console. "All human merchant vessels are ready. Cargo secured, crews aboard, flight plans filed. We can begin departure in 30 minutes, and our guests." Confused, angry. The silicate traders are demanding explanations. The toric merchants think it's some kind of negotiating tactic. Minho nodded. He'd expected this. For 6 months, the Council had been squeezing human operations, making life difficult, hoping to force concessions. They'd frozen accounts, delayed shipments, created paperwork nightmares. Standard pressure tactics from beings who thought they controlled everything. They were about to learn otherwise. "Begin the withdrawal," Minho ordered, and broadcast the message. Across Prosperity Station, human ships began undocking. Cargo haulers, passenger transports, survey vessels, mining ships. 147 vessels total, all lifting off simultaneously. The non-human merchants and residents watched in growing alarm as their business partners simply left. But it wasn't just the ships. Human technicians abandoned their posts at the fusion reactor. The engineers maintaining the quantum communication array packed their tools. The medical staff at the hospital wing downloaded patient records and departed. Within 2 hours, every human on Prosperity Station had either left or was preparing to leave. The silicate administrator, a crystalline being named Vextal, stormed into Minho's office. "What is the meaning of this?" Vextal's voice crackled like breaking ice. "You have contracts? Obligations." Minho finished packing his personal items into a small case. Those contracts were with the Galactic Council. As of today, humanity is withdrawing from Council oversight. All agreements are void. You can't do this. The station needs your technicians, your merchants, your services. Then perhaps the Council should have treated us with respect instead of contempt. Minho picked up his case. "I've left detailed instructions for maintaining the fusion cores. Your own people should be able to handle it, probably." "Probably." Vextal's crystalline body flashed with alarm. "What do you mean, probably?" But Minho was already walking toward the docking bay, where his personal shuttle waited. Behind him, he could hear Vextal shouting for his engineering team. The same scene played out across the galaxy. Human technicians left their posts at communication relays, fusion stations, medical facilities, and agricultural centers. No one had realized how deeply humanity had integrated itself into galactic infrastructure. They'd been too busy looking down on the new species to notice how much they'd come to depend on them. On the capital world of the Silicate Collective, the quantum communication network began failing. The system was incredibly complex, requiring constant maintenance and calibration. The Silicates had brilliant mathematicians and theoreticians, but the practical engineers who kept the system running. 60% of them had been human, within 8 hours. Real-time communication between silicate worlds dropped to intermittent connection. Within 16 hours, some colonies went completely dark. The Delphic Union faced a different crisis. Their agricultural worlds had been struggling for decades with soil depletion and pest control. Human agronomists had introduced new techniques, rotation systems, and biological solutions that tripled crop yields. Now those humans were gone, and planting season was just weeks away. On the Council Station, Zenith Prime, Ambassador Yuna's warning began to make terrible sense. Councillor Thexfer convened an emergency session. The chamber that had been so unified 3 days ago now crackled with tension and accusation. "The humans must be forced to return," Thexfer declared. "Their abandonment of critical infrastructure is an act of sabotage. We should respond with military force." Military force? The Delphic ambassador's tentacles writhed in agitation. "They haven't attacked anyone. They've simply exercised their right to leave. They've crippled our communications." Vextal stood, his crystalline body reflecting angry reds. "They knew we depended on their technicians?" "This was planned." "Of course it was planned," said Ambassador Kelron of the Aquarian Pods, small species that had often sided with humanity in council votes. "Did you think they would simply accept slavery? You demanded they surrender their independence. They declined. This is the consequence." This Vorarms gestured furiously. "We must present a united front. I propose immediate military action against human space. We will seize their colonies and force them to restore our systems." "With what fleet?" Kelron asked quietly. "The Vrexian fleet? The same one that has been posturing at the human border for months without daring to cross it? We have sufficient forces, do we? Kelron interrupted. I've seen the intelligence reports, Counselor. The ones you don't think smaller species have access to. Human defensive preparations are far more extensive than you've admitted to this council. They've been building fortifications, weapons platforms, and ships using designs we don't recognize. Perhaps you should ask yourself why your military commanders haven't already attacked.
Ow.
The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. The Viraxian military wasn't afraid of a fight. They were afraid of losing. On Earth, in the sprawling command center beneath Sol, scientist Hannah Song prepared her broadcast. She'd spent 3 weeks writing and revising the message. It needed to be perfect. Not threatening, not pleading. Just factual. The camera activated. Hannah looked into it with calm certainty. This is Hannah Song, speaking on behalf of Earth's scientific community. In light of recent events, we feel it's important to clarify humanity's contributions to galactic civilization. She brought up a holographic display behind her. Numbers and charts appeared, clear and undeniable. Humans currently maintain 58% of all quantum communication relays in council space. We provide 72% of advanced medical equipment manufacturing, 81% of rare earth mineral processing, 63% of agricultural advancement research, 44% of fusion reactor maintenance. The numbers continued, each one a hammer blow to the council's confidence. These are not threats, Hannah continued. These are simply facts. Humanity never sought to make the galaxy dependent on us. We simply saw needs and filled them. We solved problems that others found too tedious or too difficult. We did this because we believed we were part of a greater community. She paused, letting that sink in. The Council has made clear that we are not welcome as equals. We accept this. Therefore, humanity withdraws all support for Council infrastructure and operations. However, we remain open to bilateral agreements with any species willing to negotiate in good faith. Contact Earth directly if you wish to discuss fair trade, technology sharing, or mutual defense. The broadcast ended. Within hours, it had been viewed on every major world in the galaxy. The Council's authority began to crack. Small species that had never dared oppose the major powers suddenly had options. They could stay with a council that treated them as vassals, or they could reach out to humanity as partners. The Tauric guilds were first. Their merchant collective sent a secret delegation to Earth within 24 hours of Hannah's broadcast. They wanted to maintain trade relationships, human technology, and access to human markets. Earth welcomed them with open arms and fair contracts. The Meridian Compact followed. Then the Aquarian pods officially. Then 3 smaller species, whose names most council members couldn't even remember, on Zenith Prime. Lisvert watched his grand coalition dissolve. Species he'd counted as loyal supporters were now hedging their bets. His own military commanders were sending him carefully worded reports about why an attack on human space would be strategically premature. He'd made a critical miscalculation. He'd assumed humanity needed the Council more than the Council needed humanity. He'd been wrong. In her quarters on the transport ship carrying her back to Earth, Una read the report streaming in. Species withdrawing from the embargo. Secret negotiations beginning. The Council fracturing into factions. G1 sat across from her, analyzing economic data. The silicate economy is in free fall. The Delphic Union is projecting food shortages within 3 months. Even the Vrexians are seeing industrial slowdowns. Humanity, Una asked. Our colonies are secure. Our economy is stable. We're actually seeing growth as species bypass the Council to trade with us directly. Una nodded. Good. Let the Council see what we already knew. They didn't make us strong. We were already strong. They just convinced themselves otherwise because it made them feel powerful.
Outside the viewport.
Stars streaked past as the ship approached Earth. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning a lesson humanity had known for centuries. You can't control people who are willing to walk away. Admiral Dehoshin stood on the bridge of the battleship, watching the Vrexian fleet hold position just beyond the border of human space. They'd been sitting there for 6 days now, watching, waiting, trying to decide. if they had the courage to cross that invisible line. Update on their formation. Deho asked his tactical officer. Lieutenant Borum, you studied her displays. No change, sir. 347 vessels maintaining standard patrol pattern. They're running active sensors, mapping our defenses, but making no aggressive moves. They're afraid, Commander Kyung Sato said from the navigation station. They expected us to panic when they showed up. Instead, we're just sitting here. Deho nodded. He'd served in Earth's Navy for 32 years. He'd fought pirates, settled colonial disputes, and defended shipping lanes from raiders. He knew how to read an enemy, and right now, the Vrexian commander was terrified. The Vrexians had numbers. They had big ships and powerful weapons. What they didn't have was certainty. They'd spent months gathering intelligence on human defenses, and none of it made sense. Human ships used power signatures that didn't match any known configuration. Human weapons platforms surrounded every colony, but their capabilities remained unknown. Human military doctrine was a mystery. So the Vrexians sat at the border, running their sensors, trying to understand what they faced before committing to an attack that might destroy them. Sir? Incoming message from New Jeju Colony, the communications officer announced. Engineer Sora Han reports that the defense grid is fully operational and awaiting your command. Acknowledge her message, Deho said. Tell her to remain at readiness level 2. He'd visited New Jeju 3 months ago to inspect Sora's work. The young engineer had spent 5 years designing and building a defensive network that would make any attacker regret crossing their threshold. Automated fortresses, energy shields, weapon systems that could track and eliminate hundreds of targets simultaneously. And that was just what Deho knew about. Sora had hinted at other surprises she'd built into the system. Every human colony had similar preparations. Every station, every settlement. Humanity had learned an important lesson during their violent history on Earth. Peace was wonderful. But you survived by being ready for war. The Council had assumed human colonies would be easy targets. Soft civilian settlements, defended by a small, inexperienced military. They'd based this assumption on their own experience with new species. Most young civilizations begged for protection. Grateful to place themselves under Council authority, humanity had spent its development money on weapons instead. We're detecting movement in the Vrexian fleet, Lieutenant Borum called out. 15 ships breaking formation. Looks like a reconnaissance probe. Deho watched the tactical display. 15 Vrexian destroyers were indeed moving forward, approaching the border with active sensors sweeping space ahead of them. Do not lock weapons, Deho ordered calmly. Let them come. The Vrexian ships crossed into human space. Alarms would be sounding on their bridges now. They were violating sovereign territory, committing an act of war by Council law. But Deho held his fire. His orders from Earth were clear. Humanity would not shoot first. The destroyers advanced deeper, their sensors probing, measuring, gathering data. They were 2 light minutes inside human space when the first automated defense platform activated. It didn't fire. It simply lit up its targeting systems, painting all 15 destroyers with weapons lock indicators. Then a second platform activated. Then a third. Then dozens more, scattered throughout the system in positions the Vrexians hadn't detected. On the lead Vrexian destroyer, alarms shrieked as the crew realized they were being targeted by at least 40 weapons platforms. Each one capable of destroying their ship, the destroyers stopped. They hung in space, caught between pride and survival. Then slowly they began to retreat. They're withdrawing, sir, Lieutenant Borum reported. Returning to their previous position. Did we lose any platforms? No, sir. They never got a firing solution. Our systems are still completely operational. Deho allowed himself a small smile. That's 15 ships that now have detailed sensor readings to bring back to their command. Let them study the data. Let them try to understand what they're facing. The Vrexian fleet would analyze those readings for days, trying to determine if they could overcome human defenses. They would run simulations and calculate odds. And every calculation would tell them the same thing. An assault on human space would be costly. Very costly. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other events were unfolding. On the trading world of Kilos Prime, human diplomat Jihonam sat across from Ambassador Kelvin of the Delphic Union. The Delphic ambassador looked exhausted, his tentacles drooping with stress. My government is desperate, Kelvin said quietly. Our agricultural worlds face disaster. The human agronomists who maintained our crop systems are gone. We have one planting season to prevent mass starvation. Jiho had prepared for this meeting carefully. He'd reviewed the Delphic situation, consulted with Earth's agricultural experts, and received clear instructions from President Yoonji Kwan. Humanity would help, but not as subjects helping masters. As partners helping partners, Earth is willing to send agricultural specialists to assist you, Jiho said. We can provide technical support, training for your own people, access to the seed varieties and biological treatments that have been successful on your worlds. Kelvin's tentacles lifted hopefully. The Council, the Delphic Union, must withdraw from the Council's embargo against humanity. Jiho interrupted gently. This isn't negotiable. We won't help species that are actively trying to harm us. The Council will view this as betrayal. The Council tried to force humanity into slavery, Jiho said. Betraying them is the right thing to do. The only thing to do? Kelvin sat silent for a long moment. His people were herbivores, peaceful by nature. They'd joined the Council seeking security and found themselves trapped in a system that demanded obedience. Now, they faced a choice. Starve while loyal to the Council, or survive by breaking free. I will recommend to my government that we accept your terms, Kelvin finally said, 2 days later. The Delphic Union formally withdrew from the Council's embargo. They signed a bilateral trade agreement with Earth, exchanging their artistic works and philosophical texts for human agricultural support. The Council condemned them as traitors. The Delphic people celebrated their first independent decision in 300 years. The Meridian Compact followed within a week. Then the Aquarian pods. Then species whose names had never carried. Wait in council chambers found their voices and their courage. Each defection weakened the Council's position. Each new alliance with humanity demonstrated that there was an alternative to Council control. Species could trade freely, share technology openly, and maintain their sovereignty while still being part of a larger community. On Zenith Prime, Councillor Vexaver watched his authority crumble. He convened another emergency session, demanding that the remaining Council members take action against the defectors. We must make an example, he insisted. Show the galaxy that leaving the Council has consequences. What consequences? Ambassador Kelron of the Aquarian pods challenged. Economic sanctions. We've seen how well those worked against humanity. Military action? You haven't even been able to attack the humans, and now you want to fight multiple species simultaneously? The humans are the problem. Nesfer Arms waved in frustration. If we eliminate them, the others will return. You're not listening, Kelron said. The problem isn't humanity. The problem is that we built the Council on subjugation, instead of cooperation. We took advantage of weaker species, charged them for protection they didn't need, and convinced ourselves we were creating order. The humans simply exposed the truth. The Aquarian pods are hereby expelled from the Council for sedition, Thexford declared. Kelron stood calmly. You can't expel us, Counselor. We quit 3 days ago. I've simply been staying around to watch you fail. He walked out, leaving Thexford standing before a council that was half empty, back on the Indomitable. Admiral Deho received a priority message from Earth. He read it twice, making sure he understood the implications. Set course for the Gamma Hydri system, he ordered. That will take us deeper into contested space, Commander Kyung noted. I'm aware. We have new allies to protect. The Meridian Compact has requested our assistance in defending their colonies. We're going to show the galaxy that humanity honors its commitments. The Indomitable and its escort fleet turned away from the Vrexian border, moving toward Meridian space. Behind them, the Vrexian commander watched in confusion as the humans simply left. They weren't attacking. They weren't even defending aggressively. They were just going about their business as if the massive Rexian fleet wasn't even a threat, because it wasn't. Not anymore. The quiet war continued. No shots fired. No battles fought. Just humanity demonstrating day after day that they didn't need anyone's permission to thrive. And species after species realizing they didn't need to live under council control. The old order was dying. Not with violence, but with a whisper. The whisper of freedom. The war room beneath Seoul hummed with quiet activity. President Yoon Ji-kwon studied the holographic display showing the current galactic situation. 6 weeks had passed since humanity walked away from the council. 6 weeks that had changed everything. Current status? She asked her chief of staff. Minseo Park pulled up the latest reports. 23 species have formally withdrawn from the council. 18 have signed bilateral agreements with us. The Free Trade Alliance now has 31 member species and is growing daily. And the council's response? Fractured. Dexfer is losing control. The Vexian hierarchy itself is experiencing internal dissent. Younger officers are questioning their leadership's decisions. Yoonji nodded. Everything was proceeding as they'd hoped. Humanity hadn't sought this confrontation, but they'd prepared for it. 2 centuries of careful planning, building relationships with smaller species, integrating themselves into critical infrastructure, making themselves valuable while appearing harmless. The council had seen what they wanted to see. A young, eager species that would eventually submit. They'd missed what was really happening. Humanity was building foundations for the day when they would need to stand alone. That day had arrived, Madame President. We have an urgent situation. Defense Minister Yejin Ko entered the room, her expression grim. The Vrexian fleet is moving. All of it. The holographic display shifted, showing the massive Vrexian armada. 347 ships, all breaking their holding pattern and moving toward human space. Target. Yunji asked calmly. New Jeju colony. They're committing everything to a single strike. Intelligence suggests Thexfer ordered this personally. He needs a victory, something to hold his coalition together. Yonji considered this. New Jeju was one of humanity's largest colonies. 2 million people lived there. It was also one of their most heavily defended worlds, thanks to engineer Sorahan's work. But the Vrexians didn't know that. They saw a target that looked vulnerable. Contact Admiral Daeho. Tell him to move the fleet to New Jeju. Rules of engagement remain the same. We do not fire first. Madame President, they're bringing their entire fleet. If we don't, we do not fire first, Yoonji repeated firmly. Humanity will not be the aggressor. If the Vrexians want war, they'll have to start it. And when they do, the galaxy will know who was responsible. 12 hours later, the Vrexian fleet entered the Hounday system, home to New Jeju colony. Admiral Daeho's forces were waiting. Not hiding, not running. Just waiting in clear defensive positions around the planet, on the bridge of the Indomitable. Daeho watched the enemy approach. 347 ships against his 83. The odds would have terrified most commanders. Daeho felt only certainty. All ships, weapons free, but do not lock targets, he ordered. Let them make the first move. The Vrexian fleet advanced in attack formation, spreading out to surround the planet. Their commander broadcast a message demanding humanity's immediate surrender. Daeho ignored it. On the surface of New Jeju, Engineer Sorahan sat in the Central Defense Control Room, her hands moving across holographic controls. Around her, automated systems came online. Fortresses rose from camouflage positions across the planet's surface. Energy shields shimmered into existence around population centers. Orbital platforms that had appeared to be simple satellites revealed themselves as weapon stations. The Vrexian fleet commander must have been shocked. His sensors would be screaming warnings now. The vulnerable colony was actually a fortress that made their capital world look undefended. They're locking weapons on us, sir, Lieutenant Borum reported. All enemy ships showing hostile intent. Hold position, Daeho said. Do not fire. The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut. Everyone knew what was coming. The Vrexians had committed too much to back down now. Their pride, their authority, their leader's credibility all depended on this attack succeeding. The first Vrexian ship fired. Plasma torpedoes streaked toward the Indomitable. Point defense systems destroyed it 3 seconds before impact. Then the rest of the Vrexian fleet opened fire, and space lit up with weapons discharge. Return fire, Deho ordered. Target weapons and propulsion systems. Show them what we can do. The human fleet responded with precision that stunned the Vrexians. Every shot was calculated, aimed perfect. Human ships danced between enemy fire, their smaller size and superior maneuverability, making them hard targets. Human weapons, designed using principles the Council had never seen, cut through Vrexian shields like paper. Sora's planetary defenses joined the battle. Orbital platforms tracked hundreds of targets simultaneously, eliminating missiles and fighters with casual efficiency. Surface-based weapons reached into space, their range and accuracy exceeding anything the Vrexians had anticipated. Within 30 minutes, the Vrexian fleet had lost 47 ships, destroyed or disabled, spinning dead in space. The human fleet had taken minor damage to 3 vessels. Nothing critical. The Vrexian commander tried to rally his forces, ordering them to concentrate fire on the Indomitable. It was a good strategy. Overwhelm the flagship, break human morale, force a withdrawal. It didn't work. The Indomitable's shields held against fire that should have destroyed it. Its weapons never stopped firing, never missed. Admiral Deho commanded his ship like an extension of his own body. Decades of experience and training evident in every maneuver around the flagship. The rest of the human fleet operated with similar efficiency. They'd trained for this, prepared for this. Every pilot, every gunner, every officer knew exactly what to do, because they'd run simulations of this battle 1,000 times. The Vrexians had numbers. The humans had skill. Another hour passed. The Vrexian fleet had lost over 100 ships now, dead or disabled, floating in space, or falling toward New Jeju's atmosphere in pieces. The human fleet remained mostly intact, their defensive formations unbroken. "Sir, enemy fleet is breaking formation," Lieutenant Borum announced. "They're retreating." Deho watched the tactical display. The Vrexian ships were indeed pulling back, abandoning their attack run, but they were doing it in disorder, panic evident in their scattered flight paths. "Do not pursue," Deho ordered. "Let them go. We've made our point." On the surface, Sora allowed herself a tired smile. Her systems had performed perfectly. The colony was undamaged. The civilians had remained safe in their sheltered positions. And the galaxy had just witnessed what happened when you attacked humanity. Admiral Deho broadcast the battle on open channels. Just as he'd planned. Every species in the galaxy could watch, could see the Vrexian fleet broken and retreating, could witness humanity defending itself with overwhelming effectiveness. The message was clear. Humanity could be reasoned with, could be befriended, could be trusted as partners, but they could not be conquered. On Earth, President Yunji prepared her address to the galaxy. She stood before the cameras in the same room where humanity's leaders had stood for 300 years. Behind her, the flags of Earth's nations represented their planet's diversity and unity. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice steady and clear. "Today, the Vrexian hierarchy attacked the human colony of New Jeju. They came with their full military might, intending to destroy our people and break our will." She paused, letting that sink in. "It failed. They failed because humanity will not submit to tyranny. We came to the stars seeking friendship and cooperation. We offered our skills, our knowledge, our partnership to the Galactic Council. In return, we were met with demands for subjugation." The camera zoomed in slightly on her face. Yunji let her anger show now, controlled but visible. "We tried to change the system from within. We raised concerns about how the Council treated smaller species. We advocated for fair trade and equal representation. We were ignored. So we walked away. We chose freedom over security, independence over integration, dignity over submission." She gestured to the display beside her, showing footage of the battle at New Jeju. This is what the Council brought to our doorstep. War, destruction. They attacked our civilians, our families, our children, and we defended them. We will always defend them. That is what humanity does. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We stand up to bullies. We refuse to kneel. Yoonji's voice softened slightly, becoming almost gentle. But we also extend a hand of friendship to those who wish to walk a different path. The Free Trade Alliance welcomes any species that believes in cooperation over domination. In partnership over subjugation, in freedom over control, we invite you to build something better with us. A galaxy where species work together as equals, where trade is fair, where no one is forced to choose between independence and survival. The camera pulled back to show her full figure, standing alone but unafraid. The Galactic Council had 10,000 years to create such a galaxy. They chose oppression instead. Humanity is offering an alternative. Join us, build with us, thrive with us, or continue following those who value power over justice. The choice is yours. The broadcast ended. Within hours, 7 more species contacted Earth, requesting membership in the Free Trade Alliance. The Council's coalition had shrunk to just 16 species, most of them too invested in the old system to consider alternatives. On Zenith Prime, Counselor Thexfer watched the footage of his fleet's defeat. Watched it again and again, unable to believe what he was seeing. He'd committed everything to this attack. His credibility, his authority, his political future, all of it gone. Destroyed in 3 hours of battle against a species he'd considered barely civilized, the door to his chamber opened. For Vrexian military officers entered, their expressions hard. Counselor Thexfer, the lead officer said formally, by order of the Vrexian High Command. You are relieved of all authority and are hereby exiled from Vrexian space for gross incompetence and the unnecessary loss of military assets. Dexfer started to protest, but the officers were already moving forward. His time was over. The galaxy had moved beyond him. In her quarters on Earth, Ambassador Yuna allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. They'd done it. Humanity had faced down the Council and won, not through conquest or destruction, but through resilience and preparation. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 months had passed since the battle at New Jeju. 3 months since humanity proved they could not be conquered. 3 months that had reshaped the entire galaxy. Minho Choi stood in the observation deck of Prosperity Station, watching ships come and go. The station looked different now, busier, happier. Instead of the tense atmosphere that had existed under Council control, there was genuine energy here. Species from across the galaxy conducting business, sharing meals, exchanging ideas. The station was no longer just a human trading hub. It was the headquarters of the Free Trade Alliance. Director Choi. The morning briefing is ready, his assistant Houndbase said. Minho followed her to the conference room where representatives from 34 species waited. A few months ago, this would have been impossible. These species would never have sat at the same table as equals. The Council's hierarchy had kept them separated, competitive, suspicious of each other. Now they were partners. Good morning, everyone, Minho began. First item on the agenda is the expansion of our trade routes. The Tauric guilds have proposed new lanes through the Kasari sector. Ambassador Velthor of the Aquarian Pods raised a tentacle. Will these routes interfere with our fishing grounds? Not at all. The Tauric representative clicked in its native language, translated instantly by human communication systems. We've specifically designed them to avoid ecologically sensitive areas. We want to work with you, not against you. Right. Minho smiled. This was the difference between the Alliance and the Council. Instead of imposing routes and demanding compliance, species actually talked to each other, solved problems together, respected each other's needs. Motion approved, he said after a brief discussion. Next, we have a request from the Delphic Union for assistance with their medical facilities. The meeting continued for 2 hours, covering everything from shipping schedules to cultural exchange programs. Every decision was made by consensus. Every species had a voice. It was messy sometimes, slower than dictatorial rule. But it was fair. After the meeting, Minho walked through the station's market district. Human merchants sold vegetables and technology. Delphic artists displayed their works. Tauric engineers offered repair services. Species who had never met before were now neighbors, friends, business partners. This was what the galaxy could be, should be. On Earth, in the newly constructed Alliance Assembly Hall and Sol preparations, were underway for the first annual gathering of all member species. Ambassador Yuna oversaw the arrangements personally, making sure every detail was perfect. The hall was enormous. Designed to accommodate the vastly different physical needs of 34 species, some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some needed aquatic environments, others high gravity. Human engineers had created zones for everyone, spaces where all could gather comfortably. Ambassador, the Meridian Compact delegation has arrived, an aide informed her. Yuna went to greet them personally. This was important. Every species needed to feel welcomed, valued, respected. That was the foundation of the Alliance. Not power, not threats. Respect. The Meridian representative, a floating being of pure energy named Corolith, pulsed in greeting. Ambassador Kim, your world is beautiful. Oh, thank you for coming, Yuna said warmly. We've prepared special accommodation for your delegation. I hope you'll find them comfortable. I'm sure we will. Humanity has shown remarkable consideration for our needs. Corolith dimmed slightly, the equivalent of a thoughtful expression. May I ask you something personal? Of course. How did you know? When you walked away from the council, how did you know other species would follow? Yuna considered the question carefully. We didn't know for certain, but we understood something the council had forgotten. Most species don't want to dominate others. They just want to live their lives, raise their families, pursue their interests. The council offered security, but demanded submission. We offered partnership and asked only for fair dealing. We believed. We hoped that given a choice, most species would choose freedom. And if you'd been wrong, then we would have survived anyway. Humans are good at that. Over the next few days, delegations from across the galaxy arrived on Earth. They came to see this world that had defied the council. They came to meet the species that had offered them an alternative. They came to be part of something new, in orbit above Earth. Admiral Deho commanded the Alliance Guard, a volunteer defense force protecting all member worlds. His fleet had grown from 83 human ships to over 200 vessels from a dozen species. They trained together daily, sharing tactics and technologies. The Delphic provided excellent sensor technology. The Meridian Compact contributed advanced shield systems. The Tauric guilds offered weapons that complemented human designs. Together they were stronger than any of them had been alone. Admiral, we're receiving a distress call from the Kezari sector, Lieutenant Borm reported. Pirates attacking a Tauric merchant convoy. All ships, prepare for jump, Deho ordered. We respond to all threats against Alliance members. The fleet jumped, arriving in the Kezari sector within minutes. The pirates, seeing an entire battle group appear, immediately fled. The Tauric merchants were saved without a single shot fired. This was the Alliance's strength, not just military power, but the certainty that no member stood alone. Attack one, and you faced all. Back on Earth, the Assembly gathered for its opening session. Representatives from 34 species filled the hall, a sight never seen before in galactic history. So many different beings working together as equals. Ambassador Yuna stood at the central podium. Behind her, holographic displays showed all the Alliance worlds, a network of cooperation spanning thousands of light years. Friends, partners, fellow travelers in this great galaxy, she began. 3 months ago, humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. We did not do so lightly. We tried for years to work within their system, to advocate for fairness and equality. But the Council was built on a foundation of oppression, and no amount of good intentions could change that. She paused, looking at the assembled delegates. So we built something new, not by conquest or coercion, but by offering a simple choice. Continue under the Council's rule, or join us in creating a better way. 34 species have chosen to join us. 34 different peoples, different cultures, different perspectives, all united by a common belief that cooperation is stronger than domination, that diversity is strength, not weakness, that every species deserves respect and autonomy. The delegates listened in silence, their various sensory organs focused on her words. The council claimed to bring order to the galaxy. What they really brought was stagnation. For 10,000 years, the same species held power. The same rules applied. The same hierarchy persisted. Innovation was discouraged. Independence was punished. Smaller species lived in fear, and larger species grew complacent. Yuna's voice grew stronger, more passionate. We reject that model. The alliance is built on different principles. Every member has equal voice in our decisions. Every species contributes according to their abilities and receives according to their needs. We share technologies freely. We defend each other without question. We trade fairly without exploitation. She gestured to the holographic displays. In 3 months, we've accomplished what the Council couldn't manage in centuries. We've established new trade routes that benefit everyone. We've shared agricultural technologies that will feed billions. We've created a defensive network that protects the weak alongside the strong. We've proven that another way is possible. The delegates began to stir, energy building in the hall. But this is just the beginning. We have challenges ahead. The Council still exists, diminished but not destroyed. There are species that profit from the old system and will resist change. There will be conflicts, disagreements, difficult decisions. Building something new is never easy. Yuna's expression softened into a smile. But we're not afraid of difficult. Humanity spent 200,000 years learning to overcome challenges. We survived ice ages and plagues, wars and disasters. We crawled up from caves to reach the stars. And along the way, we learned the most important lesson of all: we're stronger together. She looked directly at each delegation, meeting every gaze. That's what the Council never understood, they thought. Strength came from controlling others, from making species dependent and grateful. But real strength comes from partnership. It's from standing beside people, not above them. It's from building up instead of pushing down. Yuna raised her hand, palm open, inviting. So I say to every species here, every world, every individual, welcome. Welcome to the Alliance. Welcome to a galaxy where your voice matters, where your culture is respected, where your future is yours to shape. We didn't build this for humans, built this for all of us, because that's what civilization should be. Not a pyramid with a few at the top and many crushed beneath, but a circle where we all stand together as equals. The hall erupted in applause, cheers, and various species-specific sounds of approval. It wasn't coordinated or planned, it was genuine. These beings, from worlds separated by thousands of light years, united in hope for something better. On Zenith Prime, the remnants of the Galactic Council held their own session. Only 16 species remained. The chamber that once held 47 delegations now looked empty, echoing. Speaker Morden, still clinging to his position, tried to maintain order. We must discuss reunification strategies. The Alliance cannot be allowed to, no. Ambassador Kelvin of the Delphic Union stood. Yes, he was still technically part of the Council, but everyone knew where his heart lay. We need to discuss dissolution. This Council is finished. We can either end it with dignity or watch it die slowly. Treason, someone shouted. Truth, Kelvin countered. The Alliance has shown us what we should have been all along. A community of equals, not a hierarchy of masters and servants. Some of you will never accept that. You're too invested in power and privilege. But others, those who can see clearly, know that the future lies with the Alliance, not this empty shell. 3 more delegates stood and walked out, just walked away, following humanity's example. The Council was dying, not with violence or drama, just fading into irrelevance as species realized they had better options. On Earth. As the assembly session concluded, Yuna stood in the gardens outside the hall. Chuan and Taiyang joined her, the 3 who had walked away together 3 months ago. We did it, Jawan said quietly. We actually did it.